Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to break down the absolute ultimate blueprint for impact. We're taking a journey, stepping all the way from the internal psychology of grit right through to the external mechanics of sharing your message with the world. Listen, if you've ever felt like you're putting in the work, but just not making the lasting mark you want, you are exactly in the right place. Right off the bat, let's dive into this by opening a loop with a totally wild question. What could possibly connect a deaf composer from centuries ago, a modern-day podcast host trying to build an audience, and the microscopic neurons inside your own brain? I know, it sounds like the setup to a weird joke, but keep that question in the back of your mind. We are going to solve this puzzle together.
To find the answer, we'll follow this quick roadmap today. Decoding the grit factor, persistence without the burnout, automating success with habits, some memorable storytelling tricks, and finally, scripting your message. Let's jump right in.
All right, Section 1, decoding the grit factor, the power of passion and perseverance. This is where it all starts, that baseline internal drive.
So what actually is grit? Well, researcher Angela Duckworth defines it as the ultimate combo of resilience, ambition, and self-control. It's about aggressively pursuing goals that take months, years, or, even decades, and doing it without needing constant applause or immediate rewards along the way.
And this number right here brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. 10,000. Think about that for a second. Thomas Edison famously failed a staggering 10,000 times before successfully inventing a practical light bulb. When people asked him about it, he said he hadn't failed at all. He'd just successfully proven 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Duckworth's research proves that when we're talking about world-class achievement, effort counts twice.
But how do you actually build that kind of crazy endurance? According to Duckworth's interview on Larry King Now, gritty people share these 4 extremely learnable traits. First up is interest. You genuinely find your work fascinating. Second is practice, and not just going through the motions, but working on your weaknesses with intense, full concentration. Third is purpose, that deep feeling that your work serves others. And finally, hope. It's that unwavering belief that no matter how absolutely brutal things get, you can make them better.
And you know what? You can actually measure your own baseline today using the 12-item grit scale. By scoring yourself on statements about overcoming setbacks, you literally divide your total points by 12. A score of 1 means you're not at all gritty, while a 5 means you are off the charts extremely gritty. Knowing your baseline is step 1 to leveling it up.
But okay, big warning label time. Let's look at Section 2, persistence without the burnout, cultivating a sustainable drive.
Because, honestly, raw persistence, it can actually be incredibly dangerous if you apply it wrong. Physician and coach Christy Angevine warns that high achievers constantly rely on what she calls garden variety perseverance. You know the type? The white-knuckled, push-through-no-matter-what approach where you just squash down all your stress. Sure, that might get you through a short sprint, but it inevitably leads to a massive crash. Instead, we absolutely must cultivate open-hearted persistence. This is about staying curious, making space for the tough stuff, and showing genuine compassion toward the challenges you face.
Think about it like this. Your mindset is the fuel for your actions. Trying to run your life on ignored stress and harsh self-criticism? That is literally like pouring water into a gasoline engine. It doesn't matter how hard you stomp on the gas pedal. You are going to destroy the whole engine. Open-hearted persistence is the premium fuel that keeps you running smoothly for the long haul.
So once you've got that healthy, premium fuel mindset locked in, you can't just rely on pure willpower every single day. You'd be exhausted. You've got to automate. Section 3, automating success with habits, the neuroscience of consistency.
To really get habits, we have to look under the hood at your brain. Author James Clear highlights this amazing biological process called synaptic pruning. Look, every time you practice a skill, your brain physically changes. It builds up and reinforces the connections between neurons that you use a lot, while quietly pruning away the stuff you just aren't using anymore.
Which beautifully explains this wild scientific fact. Newborn brains actually have 41% more neurons than average adult brains. No way, right? A newborn's brain is basically a blank canvas with super weak connections everywhere, but as you grow, synaptic pruning takes over. Adult brains have fewer total neurons, but the connections that survived are lightning fast, efficient, and incredibly strong. It's literally how you can drive to work or make breakfast entirely on autopilot.
So how do we use this biology to our advantage? Enter habit stacking. Rather than trying to forge a brand new neural pathway from scratch, which is super hard, you just piggyback onto a pathway that is already deeply pruned and strong. Step 1. Pick a habit you do every single day without fail. Say, pouring your morning coffee. Step 2. Stack your new behavior onto it, using a dead simple formula. After my current habit, I will do my new habit.
The real secret sauce here? Extreme specificity. Check out this personal example from James Clear. It's not enough to just say, oh, I'll exercise more. That never works. Instead, you anchor it. When I close my laptop for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups next to my desk. See that? You completely remove all the guesswork about exactly when and where the habit happens, locking it directly into your brain's existing framework.
All right, you now have the gritty mindset to achieve greatness and the neurological habits to sustain it. But how do you project that outward? Let's hit Section 4, Memorable Storytelling Tricks, Packaging Your Expertise.
Podcast coach Tim Wolberg outlines these 6 pro tricks to guarantee your listeners actually remember what you say. The pause creates this great tension. Open loops, kind of like that crazy question we asked at the very beginning of this explainer, keep the brain totally hooked. Simple examples make big concepts relatable. Theater of the mind creates strong mental imagery. Personal stories build absolute trust. And above all else, please, every story must have a point.
I really want to highlight that theater of the mind trick because the neuroscience here is just fascinating. When you paint a vivid picture using sensory details, a specific sound, a smell, a rough texture, you physically activate the listener's amygdala, the part of the brain that stores memories. You are literally turning passive listening into a multi-sensory experience that sticks with them long after you've stopped talking.
And hey, speaking of sticky memories and open loops, it is finally time to close that loop from the beginning of our explainer. Remember? We asked what connected a deaf composer, a podcast host, and neurons. Well, Ludwig van Beethoven continued to compose his greatest masterpiece, the Ninth Symphony, even after going completely 100% deaf.
So here's the magical connection. The deaf composer is Beethoven. He utilized intense, open-hearted grit to just keep working through monumental physical challenges. He relied purely on his imagination and those deeply pruned, habit-stacked neural pathways from music that he had physically built into his brain over decades. And guess what? We can take those exact same principles, grit and neurological habits, and pair them with modern podcasting and storytelling tools to create our own masterpieces worth sharing.
But look, a masterpiece only works if the audience can actually follow it. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Scripting Your Message, Structuring the Delivery.
To deliver your message clearly, you've got to structure your content meticulously before you ever hit the record button. Industry leader Buzzsprout recommends these 7 foundational elements for a standard script. It goes from a strong intro that sets the stage all the way down to a crystal clear call to action at the very end. Using this exact structure is a total game changer. It keeps your delivery tight, stops you from rambling, and keeps your audience perfectly oriented for the whole ride.
And there you have it. You now possess the complete blueprint for impact. We've decoded the grit to keep you moving. We mapped out the neural habits to automate your success. And we just handed you the storytelling and scripting tools to captivate any room. All of this leaves us with just one vital question for you to answer. What story will you tell the world today? Get out there and start building your impact. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.